Hi there, I'm Tom, and welcome to Tom's Grinder Lab. This is this series on how to create great espresso, which it can be kind of complicated. This is actually part 3 of 5. Now, before we get into today's content, I just want to emphasize that when you're going through this series and you're figuring out how to make great espresso, I want you to keep your current espresso machine. I want you to keep your current grinder. I want you initially at least to keep your current water temperature, your pre-infusion routine, your pressure, everything about what you currently do with espresso, which is mechanical, which is already in place. I want you to keep that. All we're really talking about is you modifying your technique. So no additional expenses required other than a few very small items, which I call the essential equipment. We'll cover those in a moment. So don't go out buying the new Butte grinder or espresso machine. You probably don't need it right now. That can come just a little bit later. So let's get into today. Great espresso foundations. 80% of the magic is here. But just to recap, part 1 was the 3 big mistakes: missing the peak flavor window. Mistake number 2, unintentional taste tainting. And mistake number 3 was ignorance of the drop. I'm not going to unpack those here. Go back, find part 1, make sure you cover these because this will eliminate the majority of mistakes that people make in espresso. Part 2 was a strategic of your understanding the bean, the barrel, the burr, the barista, the brewer, and the brain. Every time you get a beautiful espresso, it'll be because these 6 ducks were all lined up in a row, so to speak. So again, we're not going to unpack them all here in detail because it was part 2. Go find that. Let's have a look at today. What we're looking at today is the essential equipment, what I call the benchmark, how to do puck prep, the walkthrough, pour examples, and the next part, part 4, which is the intermediate. What are we going to cover next week? So I like to think of this as after the part 1, the 3 biggest mistakes, I like to think that this is all you need. When you get part 1, the 3 mistakes out of your life, and you put these parts into your life, you're going to make great espresso. The rest of it, part 4, part 5, it's all just going to be fine tuning. So let's get into part 3, dive into essential equipment. What do you need in order to make great espresso? Well, you need a good storage container. I'm going to give you examples of each of these. A scale, you need a naked or bottomless portafilter, a dosing funnel or ring, puck prep or distributor, and a self-leveling tamper. Finally, you need a shot mirror. Now, these are all the things that you are essential. You can't scrimp on these by missing one of them out. You can certainly scrimp on them by going to a less expensive place to buy them, such as AliExpress or eBay. You don't have to have the top of the range, premium, gold-coated, twirly-dirly things for each of these. A lot of these things you can pick up for 10, 20, 30 bucks. So let's have a look at my favorites. I'm going to give you the ones that I like the most. Some of them are expensive. You do not need them, but I'm going to tell you what mine are and why I like them in case you want to get yourself a set. The first thing is we talked about is storage containers. So this is a brewer, B-R-U-E-R. They produce, I really like this stuff. I think it's really good quality and it's also quite functional. We have a look at inside the brewer container. You can see this little white thing up here. That's a one-way valve. So a good bean container will have a one-way valve so that as the beans are approaching peak flavor, the gas is able to escape, but the air can't come in. And one of the reasons I like the brewer is that these one-way valves don't last forever. But you can buy a pack of replacement one-way valves and pop those in. In fact, on the top, it has a clever little system here where you can see when the next valve is due. So this is the 15th of February. I need to flip the lid off, take the old one-way valve in, and put the new one-way valve. So that's what I use to store my coffee beans after I've roasted them so they can degas, waiting for peak flavor to hit, that peak flavor window to hit. And then what I do on a day-to-day basis is I take just a couple of days worth of beans out of here and I put them in a container that's probably a bit naughty. It's not a one-way valve, but the degassing is 90% that's finished by this time. We've hit peak flavor window. And I just keep a couple of days beans in here in a $10 AliExpress storage container, which just has this vacuum, pushes all the air out, doesn't let the air back in, at least as best I can tell. But it's a couple of days in there. And that's what I use to then pour into my dosing cup when I'm weighing the beans in. Talking of weighing, you really don't need an expensive scale. I have a lot of Akaya Lunas. I really, really like them a lot for different reasons. There's the Buku scale, which I've just discovered, B-O-O-K-O-O, which actually gives you flow rate in numbers on the scale, which is pretty cool. But I'll do a separate review for that scale. This is quite an inexpensive Rhino coffee scale, and it really will do everything you want to do. And one of the things I like about it is it'll just do a normal weight, just give you the weight. So many of them, you can't just do a weight with coffee scales. You have to have a weight, and you have to have a timer, and you have to have a flow rate and everything else. Just want to weigh some beans. Something basic like this is really good. And you can get, honestly, you can get $10 and $20 scales from AliExpress, which will do the job really, really well, just absolutely fine. But a part of espresso is getting stuff you love. You know, some people have put more value and emphasis on something that does the job, that's functional but inexpensive, saves some money. Other people like to have something that's beautiful to look at and is really appealing to them, and they're prepared to pay more for that. No right or wrong either way. It just comes back to what you prioritize as your values. So we've done the scale. Next thing is the naked or the bottomless portafilter. So you notice there's no spouts on this portafilter. And the reason this is really important, we're going to have a close look at that in part 4 of this presentation. The reason that's really important is you have to be able to see the espresso as it pours out from the bottom of the portafilter. And you'll see why soon, but essentially it's so you can see if there's what's called channeling, where it's coming out fast on one side and not on another side because the puck grinds have been unevenly distributed or tamped. So this is one of my ECMs. ECM make a beautiful portafilter, but I tell you who makes beautiful portafilters. Oh my God, they are stunningly beautiful, and they're a lot less expensive. Is Pesado, P-E-S-A-D-O. It's an Australian brand. But if you go to the Pesado website, you can get different ends, you can get different centers, you can certainly get different baskets, and they have a bigger range of really premium quality, heavy duty portafilters and naked baskets, or naked portafilter, naked basket. And they also have one that's interchangeable. I'm going to do a little review on that as well. So you can have both the double spouts if you've got visitors and you want to do 2 tim pours. So they have, so hop over to Pesado, P-E-S-A-D-O, and check out their portafilters if you are shopping for one. I think they offer the best of both worlds. Yes, you can get less expensive baskets from AliExpress or Alibaba or something like that. But if you want premium quality and beautifully looking portafilters and baskets for what's relatively inexpensive price, they are the go-to guys for that. P-E-S-A-D-O. And no, I don't get commission from them or anything like that. I just like this stuff. Funnel, dosing thing. If you want to grind directly into the portafilter, into the basket, then it can get messy unless you have one of these things to sit on top of the basket. And one of the reasons I like the Decent and Sworks, S-W-O-R-K-S. Also, I might put some links under the video. Also have one that's equally good. You can see magnets around here, so it's attached magnetically to the top of the basket. With a magnetically attached dosing funnel like this one that literally sits on top and doesn't have a lip on the inside, you don't get that big gap around the basket once you take the dosing funnel off. Speaking of WDT, this is my favorite puck rake. It's Sworks design. The reason I like this one so much, and I would say I probably had 15 different puck rates, probably actually a lot more than that. I settled on this Sworks one because it has the opportunity to have 11 needles in there, and you can get these needles, which I think are the perfect thickness, which is 0.25 mil. Now, 0.25 mil needles, and if you just have 4 of them, it's kind of hard to make it work easily and efficiently and quickly. But if you have 11 of them, then the needles are the right thickness, and you have enough of them not to push the coffee around, but for the needles to go through the coffee and still distribute the coffee grinds adequately. So that's my favorite manual WDT tool. I'll show you this in use in a moment. I'll give you a very inexpensive alternative as well. This is top of the line Decent tamper. It's calibrated, so you can set it for, say, 5 kg pressure, 15 kg pressure, 20 kg pressure, which in fact, in my experience, has made no difference whatsoever. 5 kg is fine, 20 kg is fine, but it is top of the range. It's going to set you back a couple $100 maybe. Olive wood from Germany, and it's self-leveling. You see this, one thing about self-leveling, it's got this lip around it. So the tamp part is going to fit snugly inside the basket. It's going to flatten the grounds, and this self-leveling top around here is going to sit on top of the basket to make sure you can't get an uneven tamp. Me, the one that I use on a day-to-day basis is this Malvani. Again, I'll put a link underneath the video. M-A-L-W-A-N-I. It's a German tamper. This is over 800 grams heavy. You can see it's got the lip again, so it's self-leveling. You can adjust the depth of the tamp if you want to do that. And I am always amazed at how much coffee grounds shows up in these photos. It needs a clean, obviously. But I like this one because a lot of the self-leveling tamps are spring-loaded. I have a bit of arthritis in this wrist from motorbike racing accidents, etc. A few other misdemeanors. And this one, essentially, I can just put it on top of the basket with, if you have arthritis, this might be good for you. Sit on top of the basket. And this thing is so darn heavy, I just give it a little bit of a nudge, and it does the tamping through the weight of the tamper. Shot mirrors, we'll show you one of these in action, but essentially what you're going to do is you're going to have this little shot mirror. Again, you can get very inexpensive ones that are quite effective, and you're going to sit it on the drip tray underneath the group head. So you can look at, zooming it in a bit, your naked portafilter basket. And again, I'm going to show you that in action in a moment. So that's all the essential equipment you need. A lot of those, as I said, will cost you $10 or $20. The one probably not to scrimp on is the basket. If you get a good basket from someone like a Pasado, any of the name brand coffee suppliers, you're going to get a pretty good basket. We'll talk about high extraction baskets next week. But for now, in the examples that I'm using here, I'm just using a normal, standard, decent espresso basket. Let's go to part two, which is the benchmark. And let me give you kind of the high-level view, and I'll unpack this. So the benchmark is a standard by which you can enjoy an espresso with confidence and eliminate other variables. Let me explain. We're going to put, for every 1 gram of espresso beans that's going to go into the basket, the portafilter basket, we're going to prepare it and tamp it, we're going to want to get 2 grams out into the espresso cup between 25 and 30 seconds. So for example, I've got a 20-gram basket. I'm going to put 20 grams of beans into that basket. I'm going to weigh the beans, put them through the grinder, put them in the basket, and I'm wanting to look for 40 grams out. So a 1-to-2 ratio, and 25 to 30 seconds is the benchmark. So you might have a 14-gram basket. You're looking for 14 grams in, 28 grams out, between 25 and 30 seconds. Now, the reason we establish a benchmark is that if you're not getting a well-balanced espresso with 1 gram in to 2 grams out within 25 to 30 seconds, there's something else wrong. Either the beans are wrong, or you've got dirt under the shower head. Either the beans are not at peak flavor, perhaps, refer back to part one. The puck prep is off, the tamping is off. So you start by getting a really great espresso within the parameters of this benchmark, 1 gram in to 2 grams out, 25 to 30 seconds. And when you've got that, you know that all the other things are happening well. And that's the point that you can experiment with faster pours, a turbo shot, perhaps something coming out in 15 seconds because it's a lighter, fruitier sort of flavor. Or perhaps you prefer 40 to 45 seconds because you're going to put that espresso into milk and you want a stronger, like a ristretto style flavor, which is real slap in the face to punch through that milk, so to speak. But you start with this as a benchmark. It gives you a starting point. It gives you a basis for evaluation of your espresso. You're getting great coffee out, 25 to 30 seconds, 1-to-2 ratio from beans in to espresso out. And once you've got that nailed, you know you've got all those other ducks in a row. Perfect. And that's the time you can start experimenting. So that's the benchmark. Really important that you kick off with that. Let's look at puck prep. Essentially, this is what puck prep looks like. You have a puck rake of some sort. You grind it perhaps into the portafilter or into a dosing cup and then tip it into the basket. And then you're going to use a little WDT tool, which is essentially a handle with some acupuncture needles, and you're going to distribute the coffee grounds around the puck. This is really important because when you put tamp, if the grounds are not distributed evenly, then you tamp it, and what you're compressing is lighter density of grounds on one side and perhaps more dense grounds on the other side. And so the water, which is going to get pumped through there at incredible pressure, is going to find the course of least resistance. It's going to go through the part that's got less grounds in it faster than the part that's got more grounds. And that means that in one part of your coffee in the cup is going to be sour, and the part that's struggling to get through because it's more dense, because the grounds haven't been distributed even, is going to be more bitter. And that's the sinker. That's when you sip it and you go, oh my God, that's awful. Makes me realize how good my coffee normally is when you get a sinker. So this is the essentials. I'll show you how to do it in a video in a moment. Don't get one of these spinny tool things, you know, these ones you see them moving around. And yes, I know every barista champion in the world had them for, you know, a couple of years, but that's because they were giving them all the whatever. All these spinny things do is they move the coffee around in the top half of the puck. Now, I've tested this with clear Perspex pretend baskets, if you like, in the video underneath. And these things don't move anything other than the top third or top half at the best of the puck. So make sure that you get these out of your repertoire. Let's take you through how I just prepare a normal old coffee on a regular morning. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the basket's nice and dry. I've weighed out my beans and I've ground them. I'm going to shake them into the basket. I might shake it or tap it at this point, but once I've done my WDT, here it is with a toothpick. I'm just showing you, you can just grab it's not a toothpick, sorry, it's some sort of wooden sticky thing. Could be a chopstick, could be a toothpick, could be something like that. But you don't have to spend $200 on a WDT tool is what I'm saying. So it takes a bit longer, but you can do a reasonable job of distribution. But I do prefer, if I'm using a WDT tool like this, the Swarks design puck rake to me is the numero uno. As I mentioned before, 11 needles, 0.25. So I'm going to do north, south, east, west. I'm going to go around the basket to start with. I'm going to replay the video. Then I'm going to do north, south, west to take the top off. I'm a bit sort of pedantic, so I'm going to get every little, ground back in the basket, smooth it out as best I can. But you honestly don't need to do this because the tamper is going to do it's going to get rid of the surplus grounds. Here we go, the tamping. I'm just putting this under the camera to show you. I'm putting it on very carefully. Do not bang or tap after you've distributed, okay? Because all you do is you put all the grounds onto one side of the basket. We have the potential to do that. So no tapping or banging of the basket after you've done the distribution. And there we go. We're ready to do the pour. Just thought it might be quite good to give you some actual pour examples of what I'm talking about. What happens when you don't do WDT properly, the Weiss Distribution Technique properly with the acupuncture needles and so on. What happens if you do an uneven tamp? What happens if you don't do tamping pressure hard enough? How do you use the shot mirror? What does it look like when it's coming out of the bottom of the basket, when it's really going to be a great espresso, and so on? So I've got lots of examples for you. But first of all, let's have a look at how you dial in to hit that benchmark of 25 to 30 seconds. So I've got a very nice little grinder here, the DF64V, and I've put this little sticker on the top here to show you that we're on number 8 on the dial. And I'm going to do the grinding, and we're going to do the distribution properly, and we do the tamping properly. But because I ground it a little too fine, it's going to take longer than the 25 to 30 second pour duration that I'm looking for. This is pre-infusion, so you would expect just a few drops at this point. But now the actual pressure is ramping up to close on 9 bars. We'd expect the flow normally to be just a little faster than that. You can see the extraction color is pretty even, so that's a big plus. But it's just taking too long to pour. Now, this would actually be quite a good coffee, quite a good espresso to put in a milk coffee. I do like to get a longer pour, so we've got a stronger flavor coming out, a stretto type flavor coming out. That's a real punchy flavor. So there you go. That was 40 seconds. That was number 8 on the dial. So I'm thinking to myself, well, that was a bit slow. We're outside that 25 to 30 second benchmark. Let's go to the dial and open it up. So now we've gone to 16, and we're going to have a much coarser grounds in the basket. Let's have a look. And as you probably might have guessed, it's going to be a very fast flow. Too fast. It's just gushing out even during pre-infusion. So this is a 16-second pour. By the way, not a bad coffee, just not hitting the benchmark. So it's not going to be as well balanced as I would like, and chances are as you would like. But as someone once said on a forum that I was on, never tip your coffee down the sink until you have a sip. You might surprise yourself. You might actually quite enjoy it. So back to our grinder setting, we did 8 and that was too slow. We did 16, that was too fast. So now we're going to go in the middle and 12, and guess what? Spot on. So this is a pour. I haven't sped these up because I want you to see them in real time. And this is what you'd be looking at through your shot mirror. You can see it's nice and thick and great viscosity, pretty good even color across the bottom of the basket. This is going to be a very, very nice espresso. And we've hit the benchmark because it's going to take 29 seconds to pour. We were within the 25 to 30 seconds. The time starts, by the way, when the first drop hits the cup, and it stops about this point here when it's pretty much finished. Okay, so that's how you dial in a coffee. Let's have a look at a pour now with no RDT. So I've ground the correct size to hit my window of 25 to 30 seconds. I haven't changed the grind size from my setting 12, but I haven't done any WDT. I've just ground into the dosing cup, dumped it into the basket as reasonably evenly as best I can in terms of dumping, and then I've tamped. Now you can see what's happening here is I'm getting really dark espresso coming out on one side, really light espresso coming out on the other side. It's not by any manner of means even across the basket in terms of the flow rate. Getting little bits of squirting coming out down there. So this might be drinkable, but it's not going to be very nice. This is going to be very sour coffee coming out this side. From the other side, and actually there's no coffee coming out up there at all. So, and this is why we do WDT. Thank you to John Weiss from the USA who developed this technique and did all the testing on it. Let's have a look at what an uneven tamp looks like. And this is when you don't have a self-leveling tamper and you think you're leveling, doing a level tamp, but in fact it's you're doing it a bit stronger on one side than the other. You see, this is the side that's had a strong tamp, and this is the side that hasn't had as much pressure on it. Water will find the course of least resistance, of course, so the water is coming through this side much faster. You see it's how light it is here and how dark it is here. So this is bitter, that's sour. This will be a sinker, no question. Pour time, not so bad. It's within a benchmark, but it's an uneven tamp. And you'll be able to tell, you don't need a refractometer to tell you that this is not going to be an enjoyable espresso. You can see it, and then you can taste it, and you can go, nope. And in this case, we know it's because it's just been a horribly uneven tamp. Now remember, grind size has been the same all through all of these little videos. This is a soft tamp. So it's really just you know, maybe a couple of kg pressure, and maybe not, probably not even that. Same grind size again, but you'll see that the pour is much faster than our benchmark. And this is the benefit of tamping. Tamping is going to compact the coffee grounds together to create the resistance we need for when that 90-degree or whatever it is Celsius water hits the puck can hold together and it can release the solubles from the beans on an even basis right throughout the puck, from top to bottom, from left to right, from north to south. So that's it. That is really all you need to know to make great espresso. Next part 4, we're going to have a look at water, what sort of water you need. We're going to have a look at temperature. We're going to have a look at filter papers, hot start versus cold start. Is that important? How do you get a thicker pour? We'll look at that. We'll look at whether you should be dumping your beans in the grinder or a slow feed. The answer might surprise you. We'll look at troubleshooting. We'll look at semi-automated WDT tools. So this is the intermediate part. And then based on your frequently asked questions, we're going to have a look at more advanced strategies, use of refractometers, use of particle analyzers. What do I make of those? People have different ideas about them. I have an opinion, so I share my opinion with that. And then the last part in the series, part 6, is going to be frequently asked questions, me responding to the questions that have come through under the video. So make sure you ask questions on the way through, because I'll put the answers together in part 6. That's it from me from now. Make sure you head over to www.tomsgrinderlab and download the Espresso Optimization Guide, because it can go into much more detail than I can in these videos. That's it there. Pop over to tomsgrinderlab.com. Download that guide. There's no cost. There's just subscribe, and you can unsubscribe anytime if you don't, if you get sick of me for some reason. But in the meantime, thanks for listening. Make sure you frickin' will subscribe, because that's how I get paid. If you got value out of a video like this, share it, subscribe. Appreciate it. Thank you. Cheers.